Hello, this is the Blast Report podcast on all things blasting. My name is Evan Thibaud with New Wave Consulting, and I want to thank all the Drill and Blast teams along with those supporting them who are out there on the pattern. The production team at Blast Think and I would like to welcome you to today's episode of the Blast Report podcast. Okay, so I got Dr. Paul Worsey and Dr. Jill Worsey here as a guest on the Blast Report podcast. I'm going to be starting today with letting you guys know that you've both been huge mentors in my career, and it's an honor for me to have you all as guests on the podcast. And I think so welcome.
Okay, well, it's an honor being here on one of your first podcasts.
We're gonna figure that out. And so yeah, and
thank you, Evan. That was very nice.
Yes. Well, okay, so I started out in the industry, and you guys were my first professors. I remember the day that my parents brought me to the University of Missouri Science and Technology when I was trying to be convinced whether or not I should go to this university 10 hours away from home and learn about mining engineering, or, it was God knows what. And we come into your office, and you're both in there, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? All I've ever seen was a tiny little photo of you on my local newspaper saying that there was a school you could learn to blow stuff up. And I was like, okay, that's a little different than all the schools around my area. Maybe I want to do, I've been blowing stuff up in the backyard my whole teenage, life. And I'm like, let's see if I can make a career out of this. And all my neighbors were kind of like, man, we don't know about this kid. What's he doing, And so my parents are like, they've always did a good job fostering that growth. And I've said that before. And so I went and visited you guys, and my parents said, all right, whatever you say, you have to come up with a good spiel of how to get in this university. You really have to work hard, so say something really good. You can't just go in there and say you like to blow stuff up, And I just met you guys, and you guys had kind of just told me a story about 10 minutes, and they go, oh, so what do you want to do? And I said, I want to blow shit up. And you go, oh.
This is the right place.
Yeah, and immediately my parents just, oh no, they put their hands in their head. My mom was pissed, and then ever since then, I've just always tried to be a part of the ISEE and what you guys are doing. So it's super, super cool. But I've been to your house, I've ridden the horses. I'm very good friends with your son Tristan. But there's a lot of things I don't actually know about Paul and Jill, right? So I want you guys to talk about, okay, Paul, the super loud, gregarious guy who's had a TV show on the Discovery Channel, and Jill, who's quite quiet, not really quiet, but in comparison to Paul, right? But you're always together in your offices where you guys were at the same desk for a long time. And then, you became my professor for some classes and you were for others. So first of all, how did you guys even meet? Or maybe you could both say, your own story is how did you get into the industry? And Jill, how did you get into the industry? And then how did you guys meet? I think that would be a cool story. So Jill, you want to go first on how you got into the industry, or which one came first?
How we met first, because really that was a long time before we got into
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was pretty funny. So if you want to kick off on that.
So we both went to Bristol University in the UK. I was a geography major, he was a geology major, and he was a year above me. And we both had friends that belonged to the riding club, was it?
Well, yours was the riding club, and I was in the motorcycle club.
Well, they had this disco at a nightclub, and we both went with our friends.
The Trex was it? In Bristol, yeah. Down in all these catacombs and cellars and everything. Really cool.
Oh,
place.
wow.
So you can take it from there.
So, anyway, we're there. I don't know, fancy dress or whatever. I don't know.
Well,
But I
it was a fancy dress.
did I have tight leather on?
I don't know.
It was a disco, huh? I mean,
Anyway, yeah. It's,
In the 70s.
yeah, it was pretty good. And early 70s and to mid 70s. And anyway, so I saw her sitting at this table with these two other gals, friends. And so I thought, I got to have a pickup line. And it was pretty loud. So I went up to her and said, "Hey, does it take a ton of dynamite to get you to dance?"
No, it doesn't take a bomb.
Oh, a bomb. Okay.
it doesn't take a bomb.
That was close.
And you said, what kind of pickup line is that?
And she just got up straight away, and we went out dancing, and we hit it off, and
That's it, I guess, yeah.
Nice. And so then how did you go from being geographer, geologist to, okay, you went and started working in the mines, or like what fostered into this weird passion for one, explosives, and two, education, and deciding you want to be a part of that whole, making a lot of other people also love explosives?
okay, well, okay, so I'm the catalyst on this.
Yeah.
And our family actually wholesaled fireworks for display fireworks and consumer fireworks in the United Kingdom. That was back when nothing was made in China, right? There was people like Brox and Standard with firework manufacturers in the UK. And so from a very young age, I was used to all the fireworks, and my father would sell them to, the Round Table, the 41 Club, people like that, that had big displays. And I ended up putting together displays for them. So he'd buy the bulk off the family, all these display fireworks. And then I was a little kid, and I'd go, "Oh, this one's cool. We'll give one of this and one of that." And put together the orders for the these organizations, and people just got no idea that you can have a living at this sort of right, working with energetic materials, explosives, and I think that's the problem, that people just don't know. So anyway, I went and I did applied geology. And I was on I was good at math and physics as well. So I got, pretty early on, I was into a lot of the more mathematical end, statistics and stuff like that on geology, on the engineering side. And, okay, so my degree was kind of like engineering geology, sort of more engineering based. And then I got recruited to do a master's in rock mechanics and explosives engineering at Newcastle upon Tyne Mining Department. And so that's where I went. I mean, when I first started off applying for college, I was a year younger going through school. And I didn't realize you could go to university before you were 18, so I took a year off, and I managed a shop and a retail outlet, and I think that's probably good for me.
Taking that year off.
Yeah, but I mean, I was a bit naive. I thought you had to be 18 to go to university, right? So I'm like, okay. And while that period, I looked at things like brewing, right? There was, at Hull, I had a BS in brewing beer.
Well, I
thought it was pretty
sounds
cool.
like a good university.
Maybe an architect, become an architect. But I really like rocks and stuff like that. And I like more the engineering part of it. So I never ever looked at mining engineering, but, because you don't have classes at school, right, in mining engineering. So I went into applied geology, which is geological engineering. and then I shifted over to the mining side. And eventually I ended up on the, I'm an excavation engineer. That's like dig a hole, right? So, yeah, I can do ventilation, stuff like that, but I'm digging a hole, make sure the hole stands up, right? Getting the material out. And then I started focusing more and more on the explosive side. And they wanted me to stay on to do PhD, and they said, we've got this blasting project we want you to work on. And I'd had a blasting class on during the masters. But man, it was really, really basic in those days on what they taught on blasting. Really, really basic stuff. And it wasn't great. And it had been 14 years since anybody had done a PhD on a blasting topic at Newcastle. So there were not that many people at universities teaching blasting, and it's just because maybe they'd been at a mine and they'd had to be in charge of blasting, right, at some point, and that's where it was. And okay, I started roughly about the same time as the ISE, right, with my career.
Okay, yeah.
In the 70s, and when I was up there doing my PhD, I'd see all these ISE conferences, like the third and the fourth conference proceedings, and it was like, whoa, people are talking about blasting, right? And there was nobody around me to actually learn anything on, because it was so out to the side. And I was working up in the Highlands of Scotland for the Transport and Road Research Laboratory, troubleshooting road contracts in the mountains, and trying to figure out why all these road contracts have gone horribly wrong on the blasting side, and that was great. But it was a really good eye opener.
Our last guest, he told a story about a guy who would do road contract work, and his nickname was Earthquake Ernie. So you can really denote that he didn't really do a very good job, right? So yeah, so I see what you're saying on having there's a need for a lot of development in that.
Yeah, it was going up there in Scotland back there then in the late 70s was like the Wild West. People would quit their job when they opened up. In those days, you get a paycheck, right? And it actually was a check, right? Because people didn't have electronic banking systems back then. It was all paper, and they'd open it up, and if somebody made a mistake and it was too low, they'd just walk off the side. They had this one guy who opened his check on a bulldozer, and he got really upset, and he just put it in drive, right, his bulldozer in a gear, and he had it just a little bit above idle, and he just climbed off his bulldozer and left it, and it just went trundling off, and it was straight to the site office. People saw this bulldozer getting closer and closer, and they thought nothing of it until it got really close, and then he started pouring out the doors, jumping out the windows of these, sort of like plywood conics, sort of, those mobile home type buildings.
And he just walked off.
Yeah, he walked off, and it ended up crushing one of those units and then stalling out. But this dozer was halfway into one of these like mobile home buildings, you used to see on the sides everywhere.
Wow, yeah, that's
they weren't steel conics, they were just plywood, sort of. Yeah, with wheels on them.
And so this is the kind of stuff that back then that you were having that was just not common, but that's the story of that day.
Some of the stories, like I walked on site one day and I was working with the blasters because we had a trials panel on pre-splitting, and we had to figure out what the hell was going on with the geology, how the geology was affecting the blasting. So I worked hand in hand really close with the driller and blaster. He was the same guy, and got pretty buddy with him, because when you're on a site and And if you're too aloof, right, they'll screw you over. They don't like you. So I think it's one of these things about leadership is you people you work in have got to have trust, like you, and leadership is, hey, today we're going to do so-and-so, and everybody goes, yeah, okay, let's go do it. And that's leadership, rather than everybody going, oh, not again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This guy drives us nuts, right? And that is leadership, because people want to follow what you do, because they've got a really good sense about you and feelings about it, right? And that's leadership.
Okay, so when
he turns up on site, he goes, hey, you like my new belt? And he got 400 grain detonating cord. Hands up. I kid you not.
Hey, yeah, it makes a very good rope. You know, it does. Yeah. It makes it. I know people who they won't use any type of rope because it doesn't tie that clove hitch like deck cord does. You know. Big, oh yeah.
Big. And another place I saw it was I was in Calgary. I was at a conference, Western Australia, right in the middle of the desert, 6 miles. Now 6 hours train drive from Perth. And so I'm at this party, and it's a wild mining town. Well, it used to be Calgary. It used to be really wild. And party at somebody's house, and I look out, and the washing line's in the back garden, right? And they got washing out, they're drying. The washing line's this yellow, like double twist black on it. You know, I'm going, oh man, that looks like detonating cord, 50 grain detonating cord, right? And so anyway, I got to go outside and take a look at it. And it was a good job I didn't have a blasting cap on me, right? Because I'd have shot the washing, you know, I'd had a few.
No more underwear at the house, you know.
That's right, yeah.
So what? So then, okay, so now, Jill, so you are dating him through this whole thing.
No, we were married at that point.
You were married at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
after I went to Newcastle, I was there a year, and then we got married, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so you guys got married real quick, and then eventually you're getting dragged along to all these conferences, or how soon do you say, okay, I want in on this, or, you know, at what point did you decide this?
Well, I actually started typing his PhD thesis. So his PhD thesis was the first one that was done electronically at the University of Newcastle. So I had to have typing lessons to know how to type it, and then you didn't just type it; you had to put code in as well to do it. So that was my first, and then I proofread everything, all his papers and things like that, because he wasn't very good at spelling.
Like me being dyslexic.
Well, you know, if you're dyslexic and you're bad at spelling, but you're good at math, it's like, and thinking things through, it's you made, you know, to be an engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So then you got into it. So you're like, you have to now learn all these things if you're being part of his projects, right? So is that kind of one of those things?
I didn't really get into it until 2006.
So for years, you were off doing your own thing.
Yeah, and...
Yes, it's a civil engineer and transportation. Got a master's in civil engineering, then I got a PhD in civil engineering, but she's basically a transportation engineer.
And in 2006, he did a sabbatical in Brazil at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, and he was writing a book, and he didn't have any support like he would have done in Rolla, so I did all the research for him and took care of all the admin stuff. And so once we got back to Rolla, it was like I just continued doing it.
Yeah, it's proved all my work anyway for conferences and stuff like that.
It's the dynamic duo. Right, and so,
and then in 2011, in 2010, he started the master's program, and I had a lot to do with writing the proposals for that. And so he says, "Well, you're a transportation engineer, and half of the explosive regulations of transportation. Why don't you teach a course on explosive regulations?" So then I really got into it, and I've been doing that ever since.
Yeah, and she'd done my ATF paperwork and all that.
Right,
sort of
yeah, I had.
stuff. So it worked out. And yeah, she ended up with a forte in explosive regulations. He's always correcting me as well. This is really fun.
Right. She's good at it. Very good at it.
And I'm not bad at knowing what's in the orange book, right? But
So by that time, we
ATF orange
started
book,
our own
she's-
consulting company, and I'd done all the paperwork for that anyway. So
Yeah.
And okay, so it started out more as just being that loving support, you know, and then okay, now it's this loving support, and I'm like, okay, but you also now have all this knowledge, and you've found this niche of how to, you know, foster your own career, but it's really the story of the Worseys.
yeah.
You know, one does not exist without the other, and this is like this crazy, and everyone always sees you guys walking around together and hearing these crazy stories, but you know, in all reality, this is the doctor's Worseys here.
So she's my serious half. Right?
She's the serious half. That's a good point.
Okay, what happened was I met this guy called Tony Nanny, who was a civil engineer. Jill knew him well. And this guy got an Italian guy, but Italian American, and he was he Greek? I can't remember.
No,
But anyway, Italian, and he was the supreme king of leveraging, right? And I learned leveraging off him, and so I was building up all these courses and everything at S&T. Well, it was UMR back then, and so I got into this leveraging part where, okay, we're going to build the program by adding more classes until I've got something where I've got the minimum number, and then I can go for the next step on a degree and ask for it, because everything's in place. It's like, oh, I need this, I need this. No, I've got things enough in place. The next logical step is the degree. And people go, oh, wow, yeah, this is kind of novel at a university. Somebody would do that. But that's the sort of thing you do when you're an engineer, right? So, anyway, so I was looking for new courses, and I was like, man, why don't you teach explosive regulations class, because you're really into all explosive regulations and everything like that. And the kids at the university don't want to take that sort of thing. They want to, as you said, blow shit up. They don't want to learn about regulations. Oh my God. But, you know, when you get out into industry 2 or 3 years, you're like, oh shit, I really need to know the regulations, because it's my ass. Right?
Yes.
This could be serious.
And it's your ass, either if you're ticketed for messing up, but really those tickets are there because, and those rules are there because somebody screwed up.
That's great.
And that regulation's there for a reason, unfortunately, and it's probably a bad story, right?
Yeah. And so, you know, once people out there in the industry, the light switch goes on and say, yeah, I've got needs for my job, right? Need to do that. So in the master's program, what we see is the people in industry that come and doing things distance. They're like, whoa, we need this class. But you get very, very few undergraduates want to take regulations.
That is a fact. And that was put off by me for a very long time during my master's program.
Yeah, so.
It's quite a daunting one when you see, you know, this bullet point on this white piece of paper, this bullet point in this white piece of paper, and the code for that rule. And so when I came to S&T, it was UMR, and then I get there in my orientation, and they're like, "No, you go to S&T now."
Say what?
But I had already signed on for debt with UMR, so I'm like, well, I hope this little change works on their mindset, you know. And they're just like, "No, this is what we're doing, and you're gonna like it." And all these guys in the mining program are like, well, it was Missouri School of Mines, and we had to change that name once, so, but if you're an engineer, people know Rolla. you know, and it definitely, when it comes to mining engineering, they know Rolla. And then if it has anything to do with someone who presses a button for a living, or, you know, says fire in the hole for a living, you're probably going to hear about someone from Missouri S&T or Missouri School of Mines, you know, and especially now, right? I mean, how many people have you two graduated? Now, I love going to your office at the new Kennedy mine. What's the name of it? The new Kennedy mine building, and the experimental mine that you guys have, which I guess for some of our listeners here, that's, you know, if you don't know about it, there's an entire university in Missouri where there's a student-ran mine site, and you really get your hands dirty, right? So if any of our listeners have kids that they want to send to university, it's nice to get your hands dirty and actually touch explosives at the age of, you know, at a young age in class. But where I was going with that is, I go to your office and there's just photos littering the walls. You know, actually not littering, it's very well organized. But these are all the people you've graduated. So at what point did you say, okay, well, you've got this under you're teaching enough explosive classes, make it to masters, and how many are you at now?
Yeah.
You think you?
Well, when we had the masters in place 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2000, was it 2010? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I took early retirement, but it wasn't really early. It was a year and a month. But they offered me a year and a half of my salary and no penalty on retirement. And I was like, you people are nuts. People at universities are supposed to be intelligent. What's the...
They couldn't handle you anymore, Paul. You just
probably
too much politics. You know, you tell the truth a little too often.
Yeah. Well, I think what happened, it's all about Obamacare, and there's this funny age of 62, and if you're over 62, that's the magic age, then you fall above the dividing line, and if you offer anything like on a retirement package to somebody, you have to do it down to 62.
So interesting.
If you do a retirement package, it's like carte blanche. It means everybody's included above that age. So they're trying to get rid of some guys who were 80, right? They had two guys who were 80, and I'd meet them in the hallways, and they would recognize me, right? And I've been there for 40 odd years, and so this was the situation. But they're trying to get those guys out so they can get young people in that'll do research, right? But these guys are never going to leave because they're worried about Social Security, because they're worried about their Medicare, but they're under the university plan while they're there, so they got good medical stuff. And the second thing, they don't have lives outside the university. Their life is the university.
Yes,
it's like
and so you guys, you know, so now you're still involved with the university.
Yeah.
Teaching any courses here?
Yeah, I still teach explosive demolition.
Okay, that's the fun class. I mean, a lot of students love that. That's one of the best ones. You know, a lot of people see that. And
I also do a course I developed a few years back called Energetic. Special uses of energetic materials, which is all the other fun stuff, the little neat stuff. So I talk, I'll give a lecture on one thing, and maybe it's a bigger thing. I might give as many as 4 lectures, but I got all these different things, from sinking ships to, you name it.
All the interesting things that's very, very true.
Avalanche control, just all these great.
That's how I started. That's how I started my business. Was went into to a project, and a very large automotive company was asking if we can somehow simulate a tire rupture while the vehicle's moving. And you're like, ask me that again? And they're like, we want to simulate a rapid tire deflation, but we want to be doing it at 60 miles an hour. Okay, with the person in the driver's seat. And I'm like, I think I can get that done. And they're like, wait, no, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. And so they're sitting here. So the idea of having a robot driver and a remote, they actually want to study what the effect of the steering wheel jerk is when the tire ruptures, and the technology that's being grown to help reduce this event. And so I approached the company I was working for saying, hey, we should really do this, and they're like, no, that sounds ridiculous. We're not going to do that. And then the words was commercially viable. That's not commercially viable. And then eventually the large automotive company was like, we really need someone to do this. And I literally had just graduated with the master's degree in your guys' program, took the demolition courses, took this special applications of explosives course. So it was a little too fresh. Your class was a little too fresh in my mind. I think if I had been to that one a few years later and everything, it would have been different. But I had just used it, and I was like, oh yeah, I can use a little bit of explosives into this, And so that's why I started my entire company to do that. Next thing I know, I'm in the passenger seat of a semi-truck going 60 miles an hour. My friend is the subjective test driver. He's a friend of mine, Tim, and he looks at me and he goes, you do have this, right? And I'm like, yeah, we did. I mean, we did tests. We did plenty of tests. We did standing tests, but it is a different story when you and your friend are in the passenger seat and he looks at you and he said, and you're like, we did all the tests right. And I'm like, yeah, man, we got this, and the first one goes and boom, it was so boring and a dud that all the energy and the story behind it, but he just looks at me, he's like, that was it? And I'm like, that was it.
I can see the dude simple. Just about crap his pants when you shout.
He was like, please be quiet when you say, don't yell it too loud. I'm like, you better believe I'm saying fire in the hole. But
so when did you graduate with a master's in explosive engineering?
So I graduated with the master's after, I think it took me like 6 years or something. It was pretty long. I think it was 2008, 2019. Yeah, 2019, because I started my company right then, 2019, December. I had a nice midlife crisis or whatever.
Okay, but you took a couple of classes while you were finishing up your bachelor's, didn't you?
Yes. So I went in and I did the dual education, dual enrollment.
So you got a few out the way, and then of course you got the basic blasting classes when you did your bachelor's in mining engineering, and then you picked up, if I remember, a couple of classes while you were finishing it up, and then did the rest distance. And that's the great way this master's program's gone. We've had a lot of people they're out in industry and they want to learn more, and maybe they start off with a certificate in explosive engineering or explosive technology, and if you're at the right company, they'll pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's only 85%, that's cheaper than going and taking it in state, actually in person, and
very big difference.
Yeah, and
the ISCE is very much fostering it with their scholarship committees. They're very much fostering, helping support that as well.
Yeah,
that distance.
When you're in industry, to go back to college, you lose all that pay, right? And that's a significant amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you've got like Sandhouse, you've got a Corvette, you got to support, right?
He loves his Corvette. I do have to get him on the podcast. His computer mouse is the same color as his Corvette. It is a computer mouse shaped Corvette.
It's got stripes.
Yeah, it's a very good gift. Whoever got that for him was very,
So getting back around, so you're 2009. I don't think in 2009 we got up to 100 masters at that point. But we were averaging about 10 a year, people coming out with master's degrees. I know in 2020, by the time I'd retired, we had 100 masters in less than 10 years.
Yeah.
Right. So I'd done my job, everybody goes, whoa, every year at graduation, they're seeing explosive engineers, masters, graduates, and everybody's going, okay. And some years we'd see more than other things like geological engineering on masters. And so people's ears picked up, and I don't know how many there are now.
It's up over 120 now. I'm not exactly sure how many, but
There was just something, I don't know if it's in the ego of all of us, or it's just that we just like the sound of that boom or something. But when people found out that you could end up going to school and get a master's degree in explosives, it doesn't take more than 2 seconds to people to say, you want to be a master blaster? And you're like, oh yeah, that sounds fun. That sounds fun. But thank you guys so much for being on the podcast. I love talking to you guys. Always big help, big support in the community. And yeah, love you guys. Thank you so much.
Hey,
thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Blast Report podcast. I want to thank the team at Blast Think for producing this show, and please follow along for more episodes in the future, and share this podcast with your colleagues so we can continue to honor our industry and the people in it. Be safe and have a blast.